Do you have a recommended book list? This is a question that I hear a lot when I speak at different places and people are curious what I recommend, what I think is worth reading, and there's no script for this video. I'm just going to be talking about some of the books that I think mean a lot to me and that I think are really valuable to read. Maybe you're just getting into apologetics or you want to buy a book for a friend. These are just books that I think are fantastic, and especially apologetics books that I think might be helpful for you. So to kick things off, I'm going to start off with Confident Faith by Mark Mittelberg, and I am contractually obligated to recommend his books as his son, but I'm also genuinely delighted to do so because my dad's books are the books that really taught me apologetics when I was getting started. When I went off to college, I went to Grand Canyon University and I started an apologetics club, and I started learning apologetics by teaching apologetics. I would read a chapter of one of my dad's books and then I would tell everybody else what I was learning, and it was a really great way for me to learn how to do apologetics. And what I love about this book is he spends the first half of the book really kind of doing epistemology for dummies. It's sort of how do we come to decide what we decide to believe in, and what are good ways of deciding what to believe in about God, and what are maybe not so good ways of doing that. So he really kind of helps people to think through is what I am believing based on reasons and evidence, or is it based on just tradition or something else? And he helps them to evaluate that, and then he gives 20 arguments and evidences for Christianity. So this is a really good read. I think it would be helpful for anyone, even a non-Christian, but also a Christian as well. The next book on the list is Confronting Christianity by McLaughlin. And I do not have a copy on my shelf. I really thought I did, but I need to reorganize all of my books because I've added a bookshelf recently, and as I continue to accumulate, things just get out of place. So maybe I have a copy, maybe I don't, but I've definitely read the book, and I really recommend it, partially because McLaughlin, I try to read all of her books. I just think she is one of the most powerful voices in culture right now. She is incredibly articulate, and she knows what she's talking about because she was an atheist, she was a skeptic, and from the UK, and now as a Christian speaker, author, apologist, she is able to sort of articulate the non-Christian mind and articulate the evidence for faith to that person in a really powerful and compelling way. So that's a great book for anyone who's interested in just a general case for Christianity, and I would highly recommend it. Next, we've got The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel. Of course, this is an all-time classic, sort of must read for all Christians, I think, because it's number one, it's just one of the best-selling books of all time when it comes to Christianity and apologetics. But also, Lee is a master of weaving this story and kind of explaining things not just in a logical or an argumentation sense, but sort of putting you in his shoes as an investigative journalist and as somebody who, again, was an atheist and became a Christian through investigating the evidence for the resurrection of Jesus. So this book doesn't cover every topic, but it covers so much that you need to know as a Christian about the reliability of the Bible, about the evidence for the historical evidence for the resurrection of Jesus, and I just think it is a must read. All right, I can't find this one on my shelf, but I know I have it somewhere. Must have lent it to somebody, but this is Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus by Nabeel Qureshi. And this is one of my all-time favorite books. Just an amazing story of this man named Nabeel who grew up in a loving Muslim family in America, and his story of growing curiosity, spiritual learning, pursuing God, and yet finding more and more evidence for Christianity and eventually becoming convinced of the truth of Christianity. So it's one of the most powerful stories you'll ever read, but also he does a really good job of helping you to love and appreciate Muslims. And so I just think it's a fantastic read. And Nabeel was a good friend of mine and my family, and I miss him a lot. He passed away several years ago, and but I think I love that his legacy continues with this book, so highly recommend it. The next on the list is Mere Christianity Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. And anyone who knows me knows that this is my all-time favorite book. This is something that I quote on the daily, and I try to read it at least once a year because it is just chock full of good information. I have to restrain myself as I go through it because there's so much that I want to underline. There's so much that I want to I would just have to underline the entire book. But it's so full of wisdom, not only just for kind of understanding the Christian message, the internal logic of Christianity, but also just how to live the Christian life, practical wisdom for holiness, for spiritual formation. There's a reason that I think a lot of people still read this book. It's an older book, but when Russell Brand recently became a Christian, this was one of the books that he did a read through on because I think it is just an all-time classic. And I would encourage you, if you've read it once, to go back and read it again. Next is Tactics by Greg Koukl, and he recently released a revised and updated, expanded edition of this book. And I love this book because it's not just a book of information, it's a book of strategy. It's about a book about how to have spiritual conversations with people and to not assume that it's on you as a Christian to just prove everything, that your worldview is the only one that needs justifying, but that actually everyone needs a justification for why they believe what they do about God. And it reveals ways of getting into conversations, ways of asking helpful questions to clarify, but also to expose that maybe somebody hasn't thought about something as much as they thought they had. And so I really, really recommend the book of Tactics. Next, we've got The Problem of Pain by C.S. Lewis. And of course, the problem of evil itself is one of the biggest questions that people ask about God. How could there be a God if there's so much evil and suffering in the world? And C.S. Lewis tackles that topic and many interrelated questions in this book. And I've read several books on the problem of evil, and I keep coming back to this one, maybe because I'm just a big fan of Lewis and I just love the way that he thinks through different issues. But I think he really does a good job in this book of kind of explaining the superiority of the Christian answer to this in comparison to other worldviews. He has a great chapter on animal pain and what do we do about that. And so I love this book from C.S. Lewis. And if you're curious about the problem of evil and suffering, I think this is a great place to start. Another great one is Another Gospel by Alisa Childers. And Alisa is an expert on the subject of progressive Christianity and this kind of growing movement of people who are deconstructing their faith and reconstructing it in a very different way than the faith that was delivered once for all to the saints. And so this book came out several years ago and kind of made a big splash on the scene because she just did a really good job of kind of educating people about what progressive Christianity is and how we can respond to it, why it doesn't really work. I think a lot of people sort of are attracted to progressive Christianity because it sounds nice. It sounds really great. Like, yeah, let's just get rid of the parts of Christianity that we don't like and let's keep the parts that we do and let's just kind of make our own religion kind of a thing. And I think she does a good job of sort of saying, you know what, that is another gospel. That's not Christianity anymore. It's a different religion entirely. And so if you've never read this one, I would highly recommend it. Next is Cosmic Chemistry by John Lennox. And I don't have this copy. I have an older version. I believe it was God's Undertaker, and this is the updated and expanded and revised version of that one. But John Lennox is, if you don't know him, he is an Oxford professor and just an amazing thinker who some people compare him to C.S. Lewis. They say he's today's C.S. Lewis. Actually, he was a student of Lewis back in the day, and he describes stories of Lewis teaching different classes. And it's pretty wild to think about that. But John Lennox, I just think, has an unbelievable skill at explaining extremely complex issues in very understandable ways, and especially this issue of the existence of God and the interrelation of science and faith. He is a master at explaining these things. I think he has 2, maybe even 3 PhDs, and so he's a genius, but this is extremely readable. It's very easy to understand. It's not going to be confusing at all. So the relationship between science and faith, this would be the book that I would recommend. Okay, next we've got Is God Antigay by Sam Allberry. And Sam is a good friend of mine and somebody who I really trust on these sorts of issues of sexuality, marriage, singleness. I've read lots of his books, I think 5 or 6 of his books, and this is the one that I think has sold a lot. A lot of people have bought this. I think I have an earlier version on my shelf as well somewhere. Oh yeah, here it is. Earlier version, but this is the revised and expanded version that was released more recently. And this is a topic that people ask about, that people are still curious about. Obviously, there are more issues of sexuality that we deal with today than just the homosexuality question, but this is still, I think, one of the big heartbeat issues of our culture, and Sam does a really good job of explaining things and addressing the biblical perspective on this issue in a way that is loving and gracious, but also truthful. Okay, next is The Secular Creed by McLaughlin. I already gave her a shout out earlier on this list, but kind of going on that theme of popular cultural topics, this one goes into a lot more. She goes through and addresses the kinds of things that you would see on yard signs like Black Lives Matter, Love is Love, transgender women are women, so on and so forth. And I think she just does a really good job of succinctly addressing those big topics and questions. And so this is sort of a really good primer on culture and where we're at right now with some of these issues, and responding with love and graciousness, but also truth, again, to some very contentious topics. Last but not least, we've got Saving Truth by Abdu Murray. And Abdu is a good friend of mine as well, and this question of truth and what is truth, and are we in a post-truth society, I think is a growing one, and it's one that's going to keep growing as AI advances and as we continue to question our institutions of news organizations and media and these sorts of things. And so what is truth and can we know it is a very vital question. And I think Abdu just does a great job in this book. He also exposes how confusion itself is celebrated in our culture, how confusion is supposed to be sort of a laudable position to be in, and if you're certain, well, then you must be closed-minded or you must be bigoted. So yeah, really highly recommend this book on the subject of truth. So there you have it. Those are a dozen books that I recommend on various topics. If you have an apologetics book that you want to recommend in the comments, go for it. If you want my recommendation on any other subjects, I would be happy to provide a recommendation. Please put that in the comments as well. If you liked this video, please share it with a friend who might need to read some of these books. Anything that you can do to help this channel is really appreciated. As a small content creator, I really appreciate all your help and all your support. Thanks so much.